Alright, so this week I got the chance to play a bunch of the upcoming zombie survival extraction game, No More Room in Hell 2. The premise of this one is pretty straightforward. You load in as one of 8 players, all spread out in different corners across a large map. Then from there, you navigate the surroundings, searching for loot, fighting off zombies if they spot you, trying to survive and group up with other players so that ultimately you can complete the task required to get out alive. Unlike many extraction games, there's no PvP in this one though. The threat entirely comes from the zombies and the environment. There's a few different zombie types, each with their own challenge, lots of puzzles and mini games for you to figure out, often under the pressure of those pursuing zombies, and then a host of non-zombie dangers to keep an eye out for, like poison gas, electricity, and fire. So we played the game throughout the course of a full day, managing to get to the point where we were pretty comfortable moving through the map with ease, quickly completing the required objectives, and extracting with inventories fully loaded with loot. And while the premise is simple, I gotta say, there's a lot of little details here that come together for what I found to deliver a rather fun play experience. That coupled with the developer's history, as this is the same studio behind the Chivalry series, and they have managed to bring that great feeling combat into this game as well. Although I will say, sorry, no, this is not like directional melee combat where you can swing up and left and block and parry down and right. That's not here, but nevertheless, the melee combat that they've delivered does feel good. It's weighty and impactful. It feels good to hit zombies in the face with things in this game. So yeah, now there are a few glaring issues, some things that stood out early on. Namely, those were performance problems, quite a few bugs, and then just the amount of variety in the game. But much of that is being addressed currently from what we've been told with some work in progress updates, as is typically the case as well with pre-release previews like this. We were playing a much older build. I gotta say, the technical concerns aside, especially if they can iron those out, the base game, absolutely interesting to me. I had a fun time playing and will certainly be playing more later this month once it releases. For now though, let's talk in a bit more detail about No More Room in Hell 2, the game. Go over its systems, its features and mechanics, all that stuff. Before we do though, a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by New World Eternum, the long-awaited console release of the game. Beyond including everything from the original, it also comes with entirely new features, systems, and a bunch of improvements. For those who don't know, New World is an action RPG in a shared world. You'll see other players running around as you explore the island of Eternum, a large land filled with diverse landscapes, creatures, dangers, and secrets. The game features skill-based dynamic action combat with a variety of melee, ranged, and magic weapons to choose from. There is PvE in the form of dungeons, world bosses, and raids, and PvP via arenas, large-scale battles, or even in the open world should you choose. Much of the game can be soloed, though you're free to join up with other players at any time, especially if you're looking to tackle some of the more group-focused content like dungeons. It's got a massive open world, as we mentioned. It's large, diverse zones, all interconnected for seamless exploration, and there's tons of character customization from the way that you look to what you wear and what sort of build you want to play. If you'd like to check out New World Eternum, you can download the game right now on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation 5, and it's got full cross-platform functionality. You can check it out and learn more using the link in the description below. All right, so No More Room in Hell 2. Let me start off by taking you through the basic process of playing through a match. Now, as mentioned, you load in separate from the other players into your lobby. There'll be up to 8 people per game, and all of you will be spread out somewhere on the outer edges of the map. Now, the one map that's in the game currently is called Power Plant. It is set in rural Pennsylvania, and as you might assume, it features a massive power plant that's located in the dead center. So making your way to it is your primary objective, but before you do that, there's a few other things to do, specifically 2 things for you to do. There's going to be a pair of highlighted points of interest, each with their own objectives and tasks for you to clear. Now, which point of interest needs to be done seems to change from one run to the next, although from what we could tell, it looks like it will always be a pair of the closest ones to the power plant itself. In fact, in all of our games, the pairs that we saw most often were the checkpoint and train station pair, as well as the sluice gate and field hospital pair. But regardless of what your objective objectives are, the process is the same. You start out on the edge of the map by yourself with a flashlight, a melee weapon, and a revolver. You've then got to make your way through the darkness towards one of the two initial objectives, and ideally trying to team up with one of the other players as well. You'll be picking up loot along the way and trying to navigate through the hordes of zombies. These zombies are all over the place, and they will react once you get too close. It's bound to happen. Ideally, you would just avoid them, as killing zombies doesn't actually give you anything. They don't drop loot and they don't reward experience. All they really do is make your life more difficult and reduce your health. In a perfect run, you just avoid them 100% of the time, but the game makes sure that this does not happen. You can't just ignore the zombies. You will have to fight them on a somewhat regular basis. There are several different zombie types from what we saw. You've got the basic zombies, who are slow, lumbering, easy to run away from and to kill. They just take a couple of headshots. That usually does the trick. Then you've got the runners, who seem to have a much larger aggro radius, and once they spot you, it's pretty much something you are forced to deal with. They are very fast. They can catch up to you even while you are sprinting, so you're gonna want to kill them, or you can try to juke them if you run enough and jump on and over things, like leap yourself over a gate that doesn't have an easy entrance around on the side. You can eventually lose them. Then you got the red eyes. These are similar in speed to the basic zombies, i.e. they move pretty slowly. However, these ones are extremely hard to kill. They take loads of hits, even directly to the head, and I'm pretty sure they deal more melee damage as well. At least it seemed that way. As far as I'm concerned from my playtime, these are basically the elites of the game currently. Screamers are really skinny and frail. They also seem to be somewhat rare. I don't even think these things attack you, but if they spot you, they absolutely do let out this awful wail that alerts everything in what seems like a mile radius. Then you got the burners, who are also kind of like basic zombies, except they can be lit on fire. They're gonna run around chasing you while aflame, and this can then cause you to catch fire, which you have to put out. All right, so those are the zombies. Now, in addition to dealing with all the zombies, you're searching for loot and you're trying to complete objectives. The big ones being those first 2 points of interest that are circled and marked on your map. You gotta clear one of those before you can make your way to the power plant. Now, here's an example of what the process of clearing a point of interest looks like. So one common point of interest that we had to clear a few times in our games was this security checkpoint building. So upon arrival, you get this notification that the whole area is in lockdown and you have to find your way inside. The first thing you need to do is disable this alarm system just outside of the building, which then opens a door. Once inside, your goal is to restore power, and that process includes finding a fuse and placing it into the fuse box, rewiring a junction box. This is actually a mini game where you have to match the number letter combination from one side to the other. Once that's properly connected, you can flip the breaker, and then now that power is restored, you have to actually go and enter this password. You'll find it in the code book next to the computer. You got to put it in the computer, enter that properly. That finally lifts the lockdown, and then with the lockdown lifted, it opens up the loot room, and there's actually one of these found at every point of interest on the map, and they are loaded with absolutely everything that you're looking for. In fact, if you did nothing but loot these loot rooms at the points of interest, you'd be fully loaded up. Here you're going to find various weapons and their associated ammunition, healing consumables, throwables, and utility items like planks for boarding up doors or radios to distract the zombies. There's also these buff items that include things like armor and stims, enhancing your character. And at this point, because the game has a purposefully limited amount of storage space, you're going to have to pick and choose what you take with you. Typically, I would take a pair of weapons with their associated ammos, a few of the healing consumables, this self-reviving syringe, and then a couple of grenades and Molotov stacks as well. Also in the loot room is a laptop you have to interact with, and doing so then grants you access to the power plant, your main objective, and how you get to extracting. And then of course, while you're doing all of this stuff, you're also dealing with zombies. You're fighting them on your way into the location, clearing the inside of any building where your tasks are, and then having to fend the zombies off as you attempt to complete your checklist. They'll continue to come in through the doors, either knocking them down, or if you board them up, they'll slowly break down those boards, especially if you happen to make a lot of noise, like if you set off an alarm or if you fire your weapons. More and more zombies are going to come and try to disrupt your goal of completing those tasks. Now, you only need to complete one of the two circled objectives on your map in order to proceed to the power plant. Although doing multiple of them means more loot for your run, it'll be more ammunition and new weapons for fighting the zombies, but also the most valuable thing you're looking for are supplies, which if you extract safely, these these function as experience, leveling up your character, making them stronger for the next run, because the game does have account and character progression. So yeah, a lot of times you are going to want to clear multiple points of interest beyond the first one, and each of them will have a similar list of tasks as well as a loot room for you to collect more loot in. So these will include bringing fuses to fuse boxes, matching those number letter combinations, lockpicking memory puzzles, turning pressure valves, entering secret combos that are found at nearby most of the time, or setting pressure levels on machinery. And yeah, some variation and combination of these different tasks will be found and need to be completed at every point of interest, which again opens up that loot room, which is what you're after. But once you've completed one of those two marked objectives, it's then time to make your way to the power plant. And now here you've got a much longer list of tasks spread out throughout the whole massive area. And I really don't want to spoil the specifics here, as going through and figuring this out ourselves was a lot of fun. So I don't want to give you like the exact process step by step, but basically the overall gist is first you're tasked with entering the power plant. There's actually multiple entrances depending on the round and what marked points of interest you got. That's going to determine if you're entering from the northwest or east of the power plant. And once inside, you're going to have to complete several stages of objectives. This will vary from run to run as well, and it'll all be marked. It'll tell you what part of the power plant you have to go to and what it is you have to do. You're also going to get a radio broadcast that spells it out for you on top of that. But yeah, you're going to head to these different locations, do a similar list of tasks to the ones found at those point of interest, and this is going to culminate in you having to maintain the plant's power in the center by completing this rotating series of tasks, keeping it going with wave after wave of increasingly difficult zombies coming at you. This is all hectic, it is difficult, frankly it was quite stressful, but also that's what made it a whole lot of fun. And then finally, once you've done everything, if you have survived, a helicopter comes to pick you up. You've got to sprint to the landing pad, fight off the last pursuing zombies before finally extracting. And you want to extract because this is an extraction game. It's got character and account progression, and if you make it out alive, you get to keep your character, and then we'll progress it based on what you brought out with you, those supplies being the biggest thing, as again it functions as experience points that level up your character. So when you first play, you start up your very first match, you're actually going to be given an assortment of 3 random characters to pick from. This comes with some like backstory, like what their job, their occupation was, their hobby, but most importantly, it's going to help you pick the perk that you start with. So for example, maybe I get like a construction worker and he will do bonus damage with melee blunt weapons or something. Or maybe you find a pro athlete and they get like increased sprinting speed. And then on top of that, if you go through a match, you extract alive, you have supplies, you level up at various leveling intervals. At first it's every 5 levels, and then beyond level 20, it's every 10 levels. At those point, you get to pick from one of 3 additional random perks that you like, and there's quite a few of these available. Eventually, once your character gets to level 50, you are going to have 8 perks unlocked that you selected from those random assortments. Although, interestingly enough, the developer did tell me that the game actually has this built-in difficulty scaling. So yeah, if you get a character to level 50, you are stronger because of all those perks, but the challenge level of a run is apparently determined by the level of the player characters within it. Or what this means otherwise is that a run full of level 50 characters is going to be significantly harder than a run full of level 1 characters. We didn't really get to experience that in the day of playing, but I'm curious to see how this plays out. As people play and spend a lot of time and have high level characters, how much more difficult does it get with a full maxed out lobby of level 50 characters? And so that's pretty much everything that we saw about the game. As for my initial thoughts, generally I'll say I enjoyed my time with it. I like this kind of a game. This seems like an interesting twist, and it does look pretty solid so far. In particular, my likes include the combat. This was very good. The melee feels crunchy. The guns also have a good kick and impact for the most part from what we saw. Now, this isn't too surprising to me, given what I played from Chivalry in the past. That game felt great, but you never know, and so I'm happy to see that they also delivered once again, and this game has good feeling combat as well. Generally, it seems like the game is pretty well made. Lots of potential here. Now, there were some bugs and performance issues, which I will get to, but also there was a lot of polish in the way the world looks, the animations and sounds, the environment, the character movement. Like I said, the combat feels good. There's still definitely more work to be done, that is for sure, but I do like the foundation from what what I saw. The map is huge and it's got a ton of varied points of interest. We've not even seen all of them yet, but what we did come across included a cemetery, a big hospital, this train station, a church, a farmhouse, a ranger station, and then beyond all of those named points of interest, there was a variety of terrain. We saw lakes, woods, swamps, rivers. There was a section of the woods that was caught on fire, which was cool to see. Just some great environmental building and ambiance. And speaking of which, this game's pretty scary at first, honestly. Great sound design, lots of jump scares. Everything is really dark, only being illuminated by your personal light sources or light sources found in the environment. It actually reminded me a lot of my time when playing Hunt Showdown. When you're first getting started in there, you get a lot of sounds and jump scares that leave a pretty big impact. Although for sure, this is one of those things that becomes less of a factor. The more you play, you eventually learn what every sound means, and it doesn't become surprising or let alone scary for you. But as you're first getting started, there's definitely a lot of ambiance and cool, scary moments that are built here. As for my dislikes, starting off, the lack of zombie variety, in particular, the fact that there were no bigs like what we would consider elites or bosses. I would love to see some large monstrosities rather than just all of these regular humanoid-sized zombie enemies, but there didn't appear to be any of that. At least we didn't see any playing for a full day and going to many different points of interest, and there weren't any big bosses in the final room we extracted several times. We just saw all normal zombies. I'd love to see some big boss types, right? There also appear to be no events, like nothing dynamic happening, like what you might see in Left 4 Dead or Dark Tide or similar sort of games. There was nothing like that, like no incoming hordes of zombies where things got harder and you got an announcement of it. Now, maybe it is happening in the background and they're just not announcing it on the UI, but we didn't see anything that led me to believe it was a dynamic event. The only events that we saw were just the static points of interest and the things that occur at them. Also, speaking of which, we did feel like things were getting pretty easy even after just the afternoon of playing. Like once you learn the points of interest, the puzzles and the tasks that you have to do there, it's always the same. It never changes. So every time you go to the security checkpoint, you're always doing the same things in the same order. So after just a few runs of successfully completing this stuff, we were at the point where we were just sprinting to the objective, finishing the task list in a couple of minutes, and then on our way to the power plant. My first match lasted like an hour and a half as I was like stumbling around and figuring everything out. By the time we got to our 6th, 7th, and 8th round, it was much quicker. We were at the power plant in like under 10 minutes, from an hour and a half to under 10 minutes. Now that sort of streamlining as you get game knowledge, that's not uncommon. Adding more dynamic things to these points of interest where it's not always the exact same objectives in the exact same order at the exact same locations, which it appears to be from what we saw. Making that more dynamic would kind of add a little bit more to it as far as I'm concerned. Also, for example, the final room in the power plant, I'm not going to spoil exactly what happens, but it's pretty much an identical process every time. The only thing that changes is the codes that you are entering. So yeah, that would be nice if there was more variety. And then besides those gameplay and systems dislikes, I gotta say there were quite a few technical things. Lots of bugs we saw, falling through the terrain, sliding off hills and dying, getting stuck in objects. This happened quite a few times. There was also a few animation bugs, like my character holding the gun extremely awkwardly. And then also just the performance. This is probably my biggest concern right now. Lots of spots in the game, it go from running totally fine to absolute garbage. And that happened frequently enough that it was quite frustrating. A lot of stuttering, a lot of frame issues. And this would actually result, unfortunately, for as good as the melee system is, it would feel inconsistent at times because all of a sudden you'd be going to swing an enemy and there would be hitching and then the zombie would hit you because he would like skip forward and teleport a few beats. That wasn't great either. The developers did tell me and give me a list of their planned launch day 0 patch, and that's going to include things that address a lot of these issues. They say they're going to be dealing with the floating head bug, some of the floating firearms bugs, which I saw personally, weird responder views when interacting with mini games, a lot of the server crashes, some of the zombie interactions, zombies losing interest in players, zombies rendering in at low resolutions, the down but not out state glitching, some environment and level design issues where players get stuck at specific locations. Again, this happened to me. Some bugs that stop players from completing points of interest, some audio issues, some frame rate and optimization improvements, and then they say there's going to be general quality of life changes that should add a lot of polish in that day 1 experience. So that is a good list. We'll just have to see once this game comes out if it actually addresses all of those issues properly. Now, on top of that, They've got some balancing updates that will be coming with day one when the game launches. They're going to be enhancing the difficulty by making more zombies spawn. They're going to be improving AI reaction speed, which makes it harder to run past zombies unscathed. We were running past a lot of zombies unscathed in our final few rounds. And they said there are going to be some changes made to the skill unlocking system. Now, beyond all those patches, they also have an early access roadmap, and there's a lot of interesting sounding things here. They're going to be adding some new responder respawn locations. They're adding an infection system, which sounds really cool. Curious to see how that plays out. There will be new weapons, new zombie themes, performance improvements, stability and bug fixing, difficulty improvements, and UI and UX improvements. That is all currently in development, according to them. And then there's a bunch of more interesting ideas in concept, as they call it. Really not sure how far along these are. There's no like estimated release date for any of these, but the ideas in concept sound good if they come to the game. That will include the second map, codenamed Hospital, weapon attachments, multiple responder slots for different characters, customization and starting loadout options, a nightmare mode, a second game mode, more maps, more zombie types, more weapons, items, and skills, combat improvements, and then refinements to the power plant map. And basically everything on that ideas and concept page I want to see as soon as possible, because one of my biggest concerns beyond the performance and bugs is the amount of variety that is in the current game. Because like I said, I had a lot of fun with the game. I actually genuinely really enjoyed playing it, but we felt like we kind of had it figured out after a day. That feels like there needs to be more time there before we get to feeling where we're just like moving through the map with ease and we basically have the formula sorted, right? But yeah, all that said, I generally liked the game. I had a fun time playing it. I'm hoping for the best. No More Room in Hell 2 is going to be launching into Steam Early Access on October 22nd. Definitely keep an eye out for those early reviews about how the performance is and the bug reporting, because yeah, those were 100% my biggest issues. But hey, I had a fun time playing, hoping it comes well together, hoping it comes together well, and I'll be spending some more time with it later this month, at least for a few days for sure. That's going to do it for today. Thank you all for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this preview, review, whatever, of No More Room in Hell 2, and I'm hoping it turns out great. All right, thanks guys for watching. Take it easy. See you next time.